when we carve, we sit back and just a little bit at a time. We don't get no hurry. We don't have no quota to fill, and you just cut a little bit, and you look at it, and you spit on it, and look at it a while. And it relieves a lot of stress. It's just as relaxing as can be. I came from Louisville. Well, I was raised in Corbin, but I came from Louisville down here looking for a job. And Mr. Amberger here had a barbershop, and he gave me a job, and that's how I got here. And I worked there for 17 or 18 years, and went to the coal mines and left him. But he's one of our club members too. He carves with us. So we go to a few little craft fairs, and we'll set up and we just demonstrate. We don't even try to sell our stuff. We just sit and demonstrate it, trying to encourage people. We're trying to show people what that they can do, and hopefully encourage them to join our club so we can get more members, and we can learn from them, they can learn from us. It's a revolving thing. We just want people. We like to create more interest.
What's the difference between whittling and carving?
Well, usually whittlers just end up with a pile of shavings, and most of them try to see how sharp their knife is and make it as long as they can. And that's usually the sign of a good whittler, is one that can make a long shave. Where carvers end up with something. They start with a piece of wood and they end up with a figure of some sort. It's a lot harder to carve than it is to whittle.
I believe so.
I don't know if you would call it showing off, but you like to put it out where people would look at it and appreciate it, and see what you have done, that you can, that you do know an art or craft. You like. Okay, we like to show it off. It rots or deteriorates, and this is the heart of the tree. This is a limb that comes off of the trunk. And if you're lucky, you can find one like this. It's got this hood. But now this would be a limb that has come off the tree and is sort of rotted away from the trunk itself.
And this right here is an actual chunk of the tree.
That is natural. That's not being touched. Nothing being touched except for where I carved that right there. But and that's a unique piece right there. You don't find many. It's got the hood like that. It's something you accumulate over years and years, different pieces. People buy you stuff for Christmas, for birthdays and stuff, or you go on vacation and you pick up a piece here and a piece there. But to build it, we went through about 2 or 3 times we're going to get a divorce over it, because it's tedious and so much work doing it, but it's something we enjoyed it, and everybody loves seeing it too.
Well, I've always been a woodworker. I carved back in the 70s with my dad, who carved some. He was a bird hunter and a fisherman, and had a 6-bell one winter, and I was into woodworking, and I said, Dad, why don't you pick up your knife, because he'd carve spoons and ladles and things for my mother in a little restaurant she had. And he thought about it a few days, and he said, well, I'd like to carve Old Nick, my favorite bird dog. So I have a dog that's on point, about so big, paw up, nose down, tail up. Did an excellent job, and so he discovered a talent that he didn't realize he had. And so then after he got back to work, he'd come in at night like we do and sit down, and he'd pick up his knife and he'd carve. And my wife taught home ec, and she came in one day and she said, Dad, I'd like to have a little bird to put on my lapel. So he carved her a little cardinal and put a pin on it, and so she would wear it to meetings, and people said, "Where did you get that?" And ended up he was making pens for everybody. And I still see people 30, 40 years later that say, "Oh, I still have one of those pens that your dad made." So, like in painting and art, the viewer will usually finish the piece. You don't want to put in so much detail that it doesn't create the image for someone else looking at it, because they'll look at it and they'll see something that I never see in it. But sometimes you try to define it too much and you end up with some firewood kindling.
When you're making something, you're working. And I ain't working, I'm just a whittling. I used to know an old fella that made chains. He's gone now, but he'd come around the stock barn and he'd take a stick a little bigger than that. He'd whittle it down square, and then he'd go to cutting out links in it. And every time you cut out a link and cut it out, it'd get a little longer, you know. And when he'd get done, we'd have a chain maybe that long. He'd whittle out a wooden chain out of it. I come up with an idea here back about a month or two ago. I had a good piece, a great big piece of cedar, and this friend of mine's wife had been in the hospital, one thing or another, and she was home, and this idea run through my head that would sort of be for a joke, you know, and maybe give her a laugh. I made her a rolling pin, sent to her, and tickled her. I did do that. Of course, that ain't much hard to make, but a lot of people whittles out birds, animals, and everything. I never did get into that. I ain't got that kind of patience. I never did make nothing much, just first really sitting whittling, making stuff. I never did do that, just done it for the pastime, hobby. You can get into it. Those people that packs a stick with them everywhere they go. You see them, they'll have a stick, but I ain't that bad. I don't pack no stick.
So do you have, like, have to angle it a certain
Yeah,
way?
You've got to learn how to set your angle.
Well, there we go. That's not too bad. No, I ain't gonna be carving no big thing like you now. Let's see if I can get a decent size. I could see how this would take some time off your hands.
Turn it that way and they'll go to the right, and turn it that way and they'll go to the left. If you can hold it straight, they'll pile right up in the pile.
So when do you know when you're done with a piece of wood?
When it gets down about like a toothpick. Hey, so it's just more or less something to sit around and do. Make a mess in the yard and have the wife a fussing. Hey.
I was born there. I was born in a log cabin down at the bottom of this hill here, 1941. It requires skill, but you know, it comes slowly. I mean, you know, you You don't just make a guitar overnight. You start at the beginning, as you progress, you get better at it. A lot of it I cut out of the, the raw lumber out of the log. Like that piece we just sawed for the bridge, I cut that probably 12 years ago out of a big tree.
What kind of tree, you know?
Maple, hard maple.
Who taught you how to make instruments?
I taught myself. I just decided I want to make a guitar. The guitar's the first one I made, and I just made one.
The most interesting thing is you take a piece of wood, you look at it and you see nothing in the beginning, in a sense. But then after you turn into it, there's all types of characteristics, and as far as you just got to let your imagination flow and do what actually the wood dictates. Most of the wood that I turn is either a storm has taken the tree out, or it's died from some type of disease or insect, which I try not to take any trees that are healthy and strong, because there's so much that you can find, the different species that is lying there ready to be utilized, and otherwise it would go back to the soil. My goal is to turn every species of wood that grows in Kentucky, and I've pretty much accomplished that, from apple to yellowwood, and hopefully I'll be able to accomplish the goal of turning all the species. My wife said that wasn't for sale. It's got beautiful characteristics with the knots. You've got to be very, very cautious with turning a piece that has knots, due to the fact that it can come loose and cause injury. This is made out of redwood, and a friend of mine that worked in the mines, actually, this came in a load of timbers, and it was found deep back in the mines that had was reopened, and he thought that I could use it, which as to how it got there or whatever,
I do not know, and he doesn't. So anyway, I utilized the pieces that he brought me to make a box. I call it my acorn box with a lid and box on it. Box elder is of the maple family. It grows in wet areas, and it's a soft wood naturally, and all these striations in color are natural. What actually happens is the little ambrosia beetle bores into, and the secretions from their bodies creates this red characteristic in all directions. You know, you get to turning at times, especially at night. You may start at 7 or 8 o'clock, and first thing you know, it's after midnight. So you know, you get engrossed actually in, and you know, it's like anything else. It's like an artist doing a picture, and basically, you know, it is an art. If you can define it, that's the main thing.
Do you believe that woodworking is dying out? It's a dying craft?
Not necessarily. That is another reason why that I do it, because I want to be able to pass it on to my grandsons or even my granddaughter, you know, but she's not interested anymore. She's got to be a big girl, so used to she did, but I think that the different guilds, the mountain masters, the renaissance of the craftsmen are beginning actually to come back due to the promotion of it, and a lot of younger people, younger generation are getting interested, and certainly the traditional craft should be carried on, and I think it will. I think that all the different guilds and so on will promote it. And if you go to all of the different types, you know, we over at Cumberland Gap, we've got the Highland Guild, and there's several guilds in Kentucky, in the Appalachian region that, so I think it'll continue.
I have grandchildren, but I seriously doubt that they want to do this. They live in the big city, and so they're not much into crafts. It's too much BlackBerry and TV and computer games, too much other stuff that they get interested in. That's why we like to demonstrate it and show people what they can do. Even we had the Appalachian Fall Festival last week down here on the courthouse square, and we all set up and we demonstrated, and they sent school buses in with kids from out in the county and from Pineville. And you know, maybe they won't get nothing out of it now, but maybe one of these days after they get out of school or something, they may get into carving or any other varied crafts that were down there. They may pick up something. There's always something out there, whether it's basket weaving or blacksmithing or pottery or whatever. There's things out there that these kids can do, and hopefully they'll learn something and pick up another something as they get older.